Okay, I will call the meeting to order, 6:32. Nice to see everyone. Hope your summers have been good so far. We have up our consent agenda, which includes the prior minutes from the special meeting on June 5th and our regular meeting on June 5th, as well as a number of second read policies. Any discussion, questions about the consent agenda? All right, I'll make a motion then to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Pat?
Aye. Aye.
Did anyone
Can
say
you
my
not
name?
hear me?
Yeah, can you not hear? I can speak up. John, I was waiting for you to approve or not the consent agenda.
Aye, I'm good.
Perfect, okay. Emily? Aye. Arlene? Aye. And Mary is an aye. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting tonight?
No.
Okay, perfect. We have no visitors here in person and no one else, Courtney, than who I'm seeing on the screen.
That's the evidence you received.
Yeah, so no one for public comment then. Okay, perfect. We have no school spotlight tonight, so that will bring us to Morgan with our financial and business report.
And right now, everything's informational and is in the report. We are not anticipating any problems with the 24 audit. We're not over budget yet on this year because it's week 5 of the year. And we will be starting the FY26 budget process a little bit earlier this year and probably go a little deeper a little bit earlier given all of the statewide difficulty in getting budgets passed last year. But unless there are any questions, I don't have any action items for you today.
Morgan, can you just elaborate a little bit on the PCV funding piece?
Sure. So we not on. This is actually related to Sheldon. We had the air test results that came back as elevated in certain parts of the building. The next step for us is to come up with a plan using consultants for further testing. There was a lot of back and forth with the DEC about changing the parameters of that testing. When we finally got it through all of their stages of approval, the final plan went to them and they said, oh, state's run out of money, we're not gonna fund this anymore. So Sheldon is in a relatively okay place because we haven't really had to restrict use of the areas that were tagged as hot. But what we're anticipating is that there are schools with some pretty severe needs out there. North Country's had a lot of press, even if the state has kind of banked some of the money for those, the larger pool is out, and as these test results come back and either the federal government or the DEC or communities push schools to do some of that remediation work, even without statewide funding, that's all going to come out of the ed fund, and it's going to push tax rates up because the ed funding availability goes down. So, specific to NMV, we're going to have to come up with a plan for Sheldon that does not involve financial support from the state, at least at this time. Berkshire is in a kind of strange place because they're already in the queue, but we're not sure how much money is really going to be there for remediation once we get the remediation plan in place. So a lot of words to kind of say, I don't know what's going to happen. The legislature may also address this next year with more funding, depending on probably what happens with some of these more high-profile cases like North Country. I don't know if everybody's seen that news article on Digger. If not, it's be good to track down.
Are they identifying the sources in the reports that we're getting?
That, for Sheldon, that would be the next phase. So in Berkshire, we are at the point where we're waiting on more detailed test results. The first phase kind of tells you what rooms are
Right.
implicated, and then you do deeper testing to find out what the materials are.
Gotcha.
So we don't know in Sheldon really anything other than the rooms. In Berkshire, we have a pretty good idea of what substances are doing it, but we haven't gotten those results back yet.
And in Sheldon, was it a risk for like preschoolers? Is that?
It was, the only action level that was tripped was for preschoolers, and it was in kind of the utility areas of the
Yeah.
building, so areas that preschooler, that no students are in anyway.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
I think one thing to know about the PCB process is that what we have learned is that every step is incredibly slow. Now, couple how slow each step is with the no funding, we find ourselves in a precarious situation where now that PCBs have been identified, even though that identification is far, it's based on criteria that's far more stringent than the federal level. We're still compelled to repair, mitigate that. So we're hoping that they're going to come through with funding, but it's definitely a little bit scary to lean into that idea of them running out of funding as we're having to contend with two of our schools having PCBs that we have to take care of in a time when our communities are, we're struggling to pass budgets.
So, and I assume that people are talking about this at the state level, what the financial assessment's gonna be for communities having to bear the brunt of it as versus the state or federal monies being available.
Yeah, they are, and it's tied up into this broader conversation that's going on around school construction aid. And that process does not seem to be moving fast as well, but I think it gets pretty quickly tied into that.
Okay, well, to be continued. Thanks, Morgan. Morgan, anything else in the moment?
Nope.
That's it, okay. Oh, one other question. So you were talking somewhat, or kind of hinting at the need to maybe be a little more on a faster, sooner pace with the budget season. So what are you thinking? Like, when do you think we would start trying to work on budgets compared to our normal timeline?
So I think that, I brought you staffing plans earlier last year, so we brought them in October, and we started talking about that. That's probably the same rough timeline. What I will be doing is doing some more, some earlier attempts at trying to predict where your long-term, your pupil count is, your long-term weighted ADN. That we've usually just waited for the state to come up with the numbers for that. I think for you all, probably starting to look at tuition kids a little bit earlier, because we are anticipating a small 12th grade being replaced by a large 8th grade again. Not as bad as last year, but some of that. And some of us are talking statewide about trying to get a prediction on the yield a little bit earlier. And it may be just a bunch of people from the field coming up with something rather than anything from the state. Just trying to get a little bit ahead of those numbers that tend to drop at the end of December.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks, Mark. All right, Lynn, you're up.
Okay. So we have, first of all, I apologize for not being there. I'm on a family vacation. So I'm not going to apologize for being there because I'm happy to be where I am, but
We're glad you're on a family vacation.
it's been a beautiful day. So
Good.
I'll go into the personnel report. We have done a lot of hiring. Principals have been very busy over the summer. So you can see that you have it in your report. I'll go over the professional staff and ask for the board to make a motion to approve Lilith. We'll start with Bakersfield. Lilith Blackwell, middle school English, 5 through 8. Andrew Hathaway, middle school social studies, 5 through 8. Caitlin Bain is this is just a reassignment. She's moving to middle school math 5 through 8, and Grace Behrens is moving to middle school science 5 through 8. In Berkshire, Sarah Fortin is moving to the school counselor position. Gina Kells, literacy interventionist. Bella Thayer, middle school social studies teacher. Micah Montes, middle school science teacher. Christy Waterhouse, school nurse. And Sheldon Mackenzie Strum, librarian. So I'd ask the board to make a motion to approve hiring.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Emily. Do that by roll. Kat,
I,
John,
Aye.
Arlene,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
So we have there are other support staff in there that I didn't name, but for those of you who aren't familiar with this process, the board does not have to approve the support staff hiring, so it's in there as informational in each of these agendas. So we have had some resignations since our last board meeting. In Berkshire, we had Samantha Lucier, who was our school nurse, who has resigned, and Gavin, you are going to have to help me out with our middle school science. Let me just say this. We hired a middle school science teacher for Berkshire. We were very excited about this person, and they are unfortunately not going to be able to make it to the US to take the position. So,
Her name was Nani McKeezy.
so just if you want to approve those resignations.
I'll make that motion by roll. Kat,
I,
John,
Aye.
Arlene,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
I'm going to just say the open positions that remain because we're getting really close to the start of the school year, and I would love for someone to be listening that's interested in teaching. So in Bakersfield, we are looking for a paraeducator and a PE and health teacher. That's a combined position. I suppose it could be a couple of part-time positions, but currently it is one full-time position. In Berkshire, paraeducator and a half-time health teacher. In Montgomery, they're looking for an evening custodian. Sheldon, we're looking for paraeducator and a behavior tech paraeducator and a middle school math interventionist, along with a half-time literacy interventionist and health teacher. That is informational. I asked Amy to just give us some data now that we're on the last time we saw you, we were going into summer, and now we're on the other end of the summer. So we have this is information about the early signing bonus strategy that we used in the spring. We had 233 teacher contracts that were sent out on April 1st. Of those 233, 216 contracts were returned by April 5th deadline, which was incredible. Since that time, though, 7 of those teachers have resigned from their positions. Overall, we have 209 teachers that will be receiving the early signing bonus in September, which is a 90% return rate, which was also a 90% return rate during the last school year as well. So even though we lost some teachers over the summer, it has been a pretty solid strategy for us. Questions, comments on that? So we don't have anything under student this month. The next on the agenda is information about an arbitration decision. So I wanted to inform the board that we had a teacher grievance process that began partway through the last, it might have been this year before. And that really was about a disagreement around salary schedule placement involving 2 teachers in the supervisory union. One of those teachers was an NMV teacher and one was an Enosburg Richford teacher. So step 2 of that grievance was heard by me. Step 3 was heard before the FNESU board. The teachers involved chose to go beyond that grievance level and they filed for arbitration. So there was a hearing held late in the spring. this summer we learned that the arbitrator ruled in favor of the employees. So what this means for NMV is we have a couple of teachers that it really was about their dead precedent that had been set about 20 years ago that if you choose, if you come out of college and you start taking credits, so you might earn credits and it moves you to a bachelor's 15, and then you earn more credits and it moves you to a bachelor's plus 30. Well, there are some teachers that will use those credits because they're in a master's program, and so then they will get to the master step once they're finished with the master's requirements. Other teachers do it differently. Other teachers choose to take the 30 credits and then decide to start a master's program. So they might not use many of those 30 credits towards their master's because they did it in reverse order. So the past precedent was that those teachers could not use credits beyond their master's until after they had earned their master's degree. So even though that had been past precedent, like I said, for a couple of decades, that was decided by the arbitrator that we can no longer do that. So we're having to replace two teachers. There was back pay involved for the last year involving those teachers, and we're having to look at other teacher contracts in terms of whether or not there's anyone. Really, it's involving teachers who are at either like a master's or master's plus 15. So we're looking at all of those teachers to make sure that everybody is on the right step, and we will correct all those steps as per the decision in the arbitration. Any questions about that?
Lynn, moving forward, when we negotiate the next master agreement, are we going to change whatever? I mean, we didn't have language around this specific in the master agreement, correct?
Correct. So that was the argument that the administration took, was that we had past precedent. We didn't have language that said either way, but the arbitrator ruled in favor of the employees, so that we'll go by the ruling moving forward. I don't think we'll need to put it in to language because it really wasn't a language issue, but we could talk about that when we do more meetings around negotiations.
Okay,
I'm sharing this with the board because there's a financial impact on the back pay that needed to be paid. It was involving one of your teachers, and there's also a financial impact. We don't know yet who all the teachers are that we'll find that might not be on the right step, but there will be a financial impact for those that get placed to a different step in this next year. There won't be any back pay involved in those teachers. They weren't involved in that grievance, so it'll be making sure that they're right from here moving forward. Next, I just want to talk a little bit about the remaining ESSER money, the highly engaging resources investment strategy that we have been utilizing. So we have for a while been planning to use the remaining money that we had in that ESSER funding. And for those of you who remember, that was money that came on the heels of the pandemic from the federal government. And it was money we were able to use over the course of around the last 3 years in public education. What we have done with a substantial portion of that money is invest that money into highly engaging resources and materials for students. So we're investing pretty significantly in each of our libraries in each of our buildings to make those more 21st century learning spaces. So we're pretty excited about that. We also have a lot of investments in the area of STEAM. So you'll see that we'll have access to more things like robotics and 3D printing and other tools that kids can use they're very highly engaging. We made sure that we had investments that included, we tried to look across the board. There are investments that are going to benefit kids in PE and in music. There wasn't something that was set aside for art. We're going to relook at that piece. There's money that was set aside for a drama program and things like that. So we're excited about the way that we're using that final bit of money. We think that that will be money that will continue to benefit our students for many years to come, because those are tools that we've never really been able to afford with the really tight financial, that we typically have. So we're excited about that. Any questions on that?
Lynn, this is kind of the last bit of ESSER funding that we have available, correct?
It expires at the end of September.
Okay. Great, thanks.
So we also are funding some professional learning for educators that are using some of those tools with kids. And some of these tools we piloted in our schools last spring. And we know that we have some kids who are very eager to get their hands on some of the tools that we'll be purchasing. So I'll hope to try to bring that information back to the board once those tools are in the hands of kids and give you an update on how those are being received both by our students and by our teachers. I think it's pretty exciting stuff that's heading our way.
Nice, that's awesome.
So I gave some information in my board report around our FNESU Portrait of a Learner, and you can see in your board packet that there's a link to that. That should be familiar to most of you. That's something that we've been working on actually since before the pandemic. That was something that the SU board, I think it was back, Mary, in 2018-19 school year, I think, we began that journey of having a Portrait of a Learner developed for FNESU, and that's something that we decided to do and have it be student-led. So we actually had students work within our communities and people from workforce. They actually interviewed legislators and other community members, and they built a Portrait of a Learner that really is reflective of the characteristics and the proficiencies that they felt and we feel would be most beneficial for students moving into the workforce and to whatever comes after high school for them. So we're in a really exciting time. This has been a body of work that's taken us many years. We had a little bit of a slowdown during the pandemic, as I'm sure you all understand, but we're really excited that this year's freshman class will be the first class that will be graduating based on demonstrating proficiency in those 7 characteristics in the Portrait of a Learner and their associated indicators. So our students will be able to take, if they want to experience high school in a traditional way and attend classes like we all did when we were in school, they can do that. There are also many flexible ways that kids can experience school from their virtual options, their hybrid options. It's a whole new world for kids today. And those are things that are true of most schools around the state of Vermont. Thing that is different is the work that we've done around our Portrait of a Learner. One of the things that I wanted to put in that board report for you to see is that it's actually a pretty exciting time because there's pretty recent research that has come out. One is the McKinsey study, and that is a study that really just reaffirms that we're on the right path with our Portrait of a Learner, and it's really identifying the skills that students need to be future ready as they enter whatever their workforce is going to be, whether it's straight to college and then workforce or straight to workforce or military. It's really identifying that it is more about the skills and how incredibly important it is that kids have those skills so that they can be lifelong learners and successful. And the characteristics and indicators that were identified in that McKinsey study were very much in line with what we ended up choosing for our Portrait of a Learner. So wanted to share that with all of you because I know for some of you, you've been on this journey with us for a while, and that was reaffirming to see that. And I also attached an article in there for you to see, and that really is about the Carnegie unit. The traditional way that kids graduate from high school is based on how many hours they sit in a class. Typical high school experience is based on credit, and a credit is a Carnegie unit. It's based on 120 hours of seats per year in credit. So um, so anyway, it's there. I don't know if anybody had a chance to read any of that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that might come up.
Lynn,
Really,
I
it was
just had a question. Is there, as far as like the people on the ground, running with us and the teachers and support staff, like, did they have, I don't, like, do they have a roadmap or like what are the ways now, I guess, that we do like capture if they have met those indicators? Like, is it all based on the portfolio that they're bringing and then or that they're building and then that's assessed every so often or at the end of you know what I mean? Like, I'm just still trying to wrap my head around how it's like quantified, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they'll submit a body of evidence, Kat, and that could be a variety of things. So we have learning scales for all like progressions so that we can see if this is the characteristic or this is the indicator that a child is working on what we have built. And we're very excited about this. And we'll probably bring more information about this to an upcoming SU meeting, but we'll be able to see what that should look like in the early elementary grades. And you should be able to follow the path of what it will look like all the way to the end, which is at the high school graduation level. So along the way, students will be demonstrating, here's where I am in terms of my progress in becoming proficient in this indicator. So this is work that we're going to be doing together. A lot has already been done. But I don't know that I could say that there's a roadmap because some of these things we're ahead of, and I'm certainly excited about that, and I know many others who are working on this are as well. It's really exciting. I just was at an AASA, the superintendent conference, and the executive director of the American Superintendents Association was talking about Portugal learner and proficiency-based learning, and he was talking about how they have a grant that 4 schools who are piloting this work that's going to be eligible in October. So we've already put our name in to be one of those schools because this is like right on the edge of what the research is talking about. Like this is really the best way to prepare our students for the future, and we're very excited about where we're at with that. What I'm going to talk about next, Kat, is about the professional learning piece. And I think part of your question was around how are we preparing teachers too? Like it's teachers and students. And our curriculum team and some of our principals, we have a whole collective team. We called it our needs-based professional learning team, have been working for about a year and a half now. And they have built a really incredible professional learning plan that we think can become a multi-year professional learning plan that really is our like 5 priorities. And you can see that in your board notes. We identified the 5 big areas, and a lot of these you'll recognize as being very centered on what the board's goals are for the organization. So the first big priority area is around portrait of a learner and proficiency based and relevant instruction. The second is around reading mastery at all levels. The third is around culturally responsive and high leverage practices. The fourth is around positive and supportive school culture. And the fifth is around our multi-tiered system of supports. So those are our big goals that we're working towards, and our professional learning for the next several years is going to be targeted towards this. So our teachers they have already done this. They've already self-assessed to determine where's their learning edge and which of these will they choose to be their focus for the next year. And I had teachers ask me, are we going to be able to repeat this after this year? Because there's more than one that I want to focus on, which is really exciting because I know sometimes heading off to in-service is not the preferred thing for teachers to be able to do, but our team has worked very, very hard to personalize our professional learning. And a big focus is designing our professional learning the way proficiency-based learning should be developed for students. So we're trying to model what we want for kids. So teachers will be able to experience some of the things that our students will be experiencing as well. So I don't know hoping that answers your question, Kat.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And I just love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, and then I have a question just to kind of extrapolate on what you were just saying. I'm curious because this is such a paradigm shift in a lot of ways, and it's kind of very like of the moment, and this kind of shift in how we understand like teaching and learning and future readiness for our learners. Do you see or know at the for up and coming teachers if college age students in education programs? I mean, I'm sure there's not a universal answer to that because there's all sorts of different types of programs, but do you see this kind of new paradigm kind of infiltrating, so to speak, the kind of curriculum at the university level for our future teachers, so that when they are coming into systems that are now gravitating more toward this kind of process of learning, that they understand it and kind of know it?
That's actually a great question. My mind went in two different places. The first is I will take you. My first reaction is we haven't hired a lot of traditionally, a lot of teachers who are going on a traditional path to come into the teaching field. So I think this board knows that we struggle with hiring because there's not a lot of people going into the field of teaching right now. So those that are coming out of university who've completed a year degree in education, I'm seeing they're not there in terms of the future focused work, but I'm seeing more having more experience around assessment for learning and more experience around maybe universally designing instruction, but not really with that shift that we're trying to make in terms of trying to be really future focused with our work. So I think that's something that I certainly have advocated for. I had a meeting with someone from UVM not too long ago, and it's something that I will continue to advocate for because I think that's incredibly important. But we can have influence around that, but we can't have control over it. What we can have control over is the people who work for us. We can make sure that the professional learning that we do with them is really targeted towards that, and people are really shifting their frame of thinking to be able to best support the needs of our students, preparing them for their future. Because the danger is that the future looks really different than our past, and we would be super remiss to be not looking ahead at how we can best prepare them for what the direction that they're heading in. So I think that we'll keep focusing on training our teachers better. And Mary, I'll keep advocating. I love to talk to people about these things, and I'll keep advocating for changes in other places around this type of work as well.
Great, thanks so much, Lynn. Anything else, Lynn, on your agenda? You all set?
I'm all set. I don't have anything else tonight.
All right.
Lynn, can I ask a question about, I had a call today from a community member and I hadn't heard anything about this, but since I was coming here tonight, I said that I would ask, but it had to do with a court ruling in the state of Vermont on a student that received a vaccine at school unknown to the parents. And so this community member was just kind of questioning, what our practices are, which I mean, I didn't want to go too far out on a limb, but I'm like, I never really heard of,
Yeah.
schools. And I mean, I don't know who would administer that other than a nurse. And I told the community member, I think we had vaccine clinics, back when COVID was in the thick of it, but that was more like a community, open to the community or whatever. So I just wondered, is that anything that you had
We would
heard about? Is that just a fluke? I mean, we don't offer vaccines in our schools, do we?
we have offered vaccines in our schools, but not to students without parent permission. Parents have to come to those clinics with kids to get the vaccines, and we have sometimes like the Vermont Department of Health will reach out and say, you know, we'd like to offer this free clinic. Like we've offered flu clinics in the past. There were COVID-19 vaccines that happened, but none of those would have happened without parental permission. We would never give a vaccine without parental permission. So I don't know about the court case that you're talking about, but if you want to know more, I could try to find it and send it your way.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of a heads up too, because they might be reaching out, I think she was going to contact, the principal and then mentioned reaching out to you. So,
That's perfectly fine. But I just want to assure
okay.
anyone who's listening that, we would not to be vaccinating children without parents' permission. We might offer
Yeah.
a space for the Vermont Department of Health to come in and do a clinic, but there's a whole process that, parents bring kids to those clinics.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, so we'll move on to our principal reports and,
Sorry.
what's that?
I just wanted to apologize to the principals. I just found out that your templates were different from last year, so your categories are different just for this month. They're right for every other month. I don't know how I did it. And Sandy might not be able to talk. Her Wi-Fi is pretty on and off right now.
Oh, okay,
So I just wanted to let you know, if you don't hear, that's why.
okay, well, we'll see if we can, and then if not, we can skip her. So Kevin, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you for your
Nice to be here.
first board meeting.
So Bakersfield. So you all received what I sent out, I believe, right? So there's that. But I'll just talk about a couple of things over the last couple of weeks. We had I set up some time with teachers to meet. One morning, early afternoon, we talked about EST, MTSS, RTI, and mapped out what the right next step is for us here at the school. And then excitingly, there's a group of us that are heading into Essex. They have a national conference is coming in Monday and Tuesday around SEL and behavior. And it was sold out, but we begged and got ourselves in there. So 5 of us are heading down to that, which again will outline what the right next steps are for us in that area as well. A couple of things that I'm listening about the portrait of a learner. I'm meeting tomorrow with 13 5th through 8th graders. I just created a student leadership team by saying, would you like to come and have pizza? And they are. It works every time. And one of the things we're talking about is that portrait of a learner. They're going to be outlined what they believe would be a successful ending to a Bakersfield career, and what does it take to be successful. And then I am fairly certain that the stuff they talk about is going to be the stuff that's also in that portrait of a learner. So they're going to kind of get that in the back end. Like, hey, guess what? This works really well. And so when we think about our student-led conferences, we think about our portfolios for this upcoming year. It should tie in nicely with that. And I think everything else we chatted about, or it's in that. If I can answer questions in there if you wish, but that's okay.
Great, yeah, that's great.
Thanks, Charlie.
What about the kids who can't come tomorrow? Do they have a chance to join your leadership in this fall?
Yep, so the note went out and said that anybody that can't make it, and I had 2 that reached out and said they're gonna be on vacation. So I'm actually meeting with one of their families the week after, just because they wanna meet and tell me all the wonderful things that are going on. And so that'll be great. And then and when we come back to school, I'm hoping I can recruit more. As you can imagine, the 13 kids are the 13 kids you probably could have chosen. Right? Like they're the ones that are going to come. They're the ones that are fully invested in the school. But how do we find the ones that aren't fully invested? And how do we find the ones that aren't feeling the value and aren't feeling valued? So that's part of the.
Or their families aren't feeling.
Possibly. Yeah. Arlene, I remember when I was here before, we had almost 100% parent conferences. There were less than 30. And so that type of.
I look at our sports participation, same thing.
Sports is dropped down. We're rumor had it. We might not be able to house a boys basketball team because we don't have enough kids. And you need 5. So that's we've got to figure out what that is. So feeling valued and being proud to wear that Bakersfield jersey and that, it's just, we got to get to that spot.
Good job, the board.
I don't know what to do.
Just I got it.
Listen, I focus on this.
I got
focus on that.
Who's over there?
Lynn mentioned phys ed. We had somebody today that expressed an interest, so we're hoping that position will be filled. And then Paris, we had somebody resign today. So it's kind of goes like this. And I think it's going to go like that for the next couple of weeks until we get it.
PE person, I'm just curious.
Yes,
Somebody,
it's the one that contacted you.
I was like, do we have somebody who's licensed and ready to go?
No, but they'll be licensed after they get the provisional.
Yeah.
And we'll look for a mentor, and surround that person with some, the person that Erling's talking about, I'm not gonna mention their name, but is a great person.
Yeah.
Has some education, has played sports, great personality, upbeat.
Has come through here.
What's that?
It's a local
person, and is able to be taught and able to be mentored really well. So I'm excited about that. I'm looking for someone who might have retired recently as a phys ed teacher to potentially mentor. So that might be helpful.
She did reach out.
Yes, she told me she did. Right, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Gavin?
So then, I was able to post our VT cap scores this past year. They were released last week, and obviously, one of the things that we saw was that, once again, that there is some work for us to do, and we have been devoting a tremendous amount of this past summer working on that. Once again, the three major levers we've been looking at to affect positive change and growth in student achievement have been our MTSS system, and in addition to that, our PLC process, and then our behavior management as well. A big portion of that has been some very intensive summer work with the leadership team, particularly the assistant principal and I, finding ways to effectively implement developmental design into instruction. And I think one of the biggest areas, as our last meeting showed, was that there definitely needed to be some support for our middle school particularly. And so we are we are in a transition mode, and it's a good change as well. We've brought in a number of new staff members who share our positive approach towards supporting the whole student. In addition to that, we've developed, we're revising our student and faculty handbooks to incorporate some of those key tenets and principles of developmental design into the classroom to make sure that we're helping to foster strong relationships in the classroom to help increase engagement. In addition to that, we spent a tremendous amount of time structuring our schedules for next year, which are, I'm happy to say, are done, although that felt sort of like the more you dug into it, the more you realized there was work to be done. And of course, like any schedule, you change one small thing and it ripples across every single schedule. So it's like, oh, by giving these students, these fifth graders 5 extra minutes of ELA intervention, our kindergartners are no longer going to have lunch. I hope they don't mind. In all seriousness, one of the biggest things we wanted to do was just make sure that we're putting in the systems and structures for our teachers to be able to allocate their time in the most meaningful way. And that goes down to even having clear schedules for when our interventionists are either doing targeted intervention during win time or small group instruction as well. Lastly, we just finally are in the process of finalizing our PD and PLC schedule as well. As last year, one of the things that we found is when we have those structures in place and those allocated times, it really helps increase the efficacy of those meetings. And we will be spending the next, in the lead up to our orientation for teachers, we'll be spending this final stretch of time solidifying the protocols and procedures for our PLCs to make sure that teachers are able to have a strong guiding post for where to dedicate their efforts as well. So the biggest thing is, although I will confess that I was disappointed by this past result for the VT cap, I definitely think there's room for growth. We're going to also not lose the lesson behind it and make sure that we can take the appropriate steps to see that growth over time and close those achievement gaps.
Great, thanks so much, Gavin. Maybe.
I'll give it
why
a
don't we-
try.
Okay, how, you wanna give it a try, Sandy?
I just unmuted. I keep going in and out, but
Okay.
I don't have a lot to add. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Hello? Okay. I don't have a lot to add, but I did want to mention something, just acknowledge our poor little guy that we lost our student in July and the day before his 6th birthday. And I did want to mention that, not something I felt I should put on my report, but we are also planning to have plant a memorial tree on the grounds in his honor. So we will be doing that probably the night of open house. I'm also very excited to be able to have open house on a Thursday evening before school starts this year. Typically we have open house the night before school starts, but since we're starting on a Monday, we're having the barbecue and open house on the Thursday. So I'm thinking that's going to be something different and fun for us. Anyone have any questions about my report that I could answer?
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you. If you have any questions, let me know.
Certainly. Terry Sue.
I just have two quick things. One, I've been meeting one-on-one with teachers who are available for a 20-minute sit-down this summer to get their hopes and goals and things they think they need support for. And I've got through about half of the staff already. There's a number who are not going to be available to in-service week, which is fine. But the majority have taken the summer to get re-energized and have been feeling really hopeful and excited about the start of the year. I have a large number of staff attending the PD right now for the new ELA curriculums and are feeling super excited about that. So I'm really happy to hear that. And they've been showing up at the building just to share what they learned each day. So it's been kind of fun with this group of like 6 or 7 teachers right now that are in the current session, really digging in and finding it to be super helpful and engaging. So I figure as teachers, we find it engaging, the students definitely will. Second thing is we were honored by the Vermont Department of Health. They have an asthma program and you have to be nominated for it, I guess. And we received the Silver Medal Award for Asthma Friendly Schools recognized. And also we had a second one in the same thing for Cindy Hale, our school nurse, who's also recognized with an award for our asthma friendly school recognition. And she was kind of funny because her answer was, well, now we're going to aim for gold. So I love that. And I think that's really important since Vermont is one of the states with the highest incidence of asthma and 61% of it is uncontrolled asthma. So the fact that we're really working really hard to keep our students safe and Cindy is one of the spearheads of that really makes me proud to have her as our employee at our school. That's all. And then everything else is hopefully in my report. If you have questions, I can answer.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to board business.
Can I ask one question of all the principals? I had a community member ask me, last year was the first year Bakersfield did not bus students to sporting events they had in the past, 5, 6, 7, 8. And my understanding from this citizen was that they were told that another school asked them not to because Bakersfield was the only school still transporting to sporting events. And they said that the athletic budgets had gone up in all 4 elementary schools. Does that mean the busing is going to come back for 5th through 8th? Because they knew some kids weren't playing because they couldn't get the games. They said, I can ask the question. I don't have an answer.
So we actually talked about that, Arlene, in a leadership meeting this spring. And I think that wasn't a budget decision. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know that was happening. It was more about like they were struggling to get bus drivers. We have a tremendous bus driver shortage as well. So I believe that original decision had to do with the finances. No, I'm sorry, not around the finances. It had to do with the drivers, but principals. I know Sandy might be the only one with the context of that. I don't know if Gavin or Terry Sue experienced anything about that last year.
All I know is
It
when I
was the
asked-
driver issue.
It wasn't us, it was drivers. Was it?
Yeah, I was saying.
So is that gonna be something that I can tell this person that we'll attempt, but we don't know what that's gonna bring?
I think you should let us take that back, Arlene. I mean, we have to have a conversation about things like this without making a commitment to say that we're going to do something like this. So the principals and I mean, this also involves other schools in the supervisory union as well. We did have a conversation about it. I don't know that there's a change in terms of access to that. But we can bring it back to our leadership team and have a conversation, but I can't make promises for the fall for sure.
Is that a decision that will be made for all 4 schools, or can our principals in their own schools, if they find someone, make that decision, or is it gonna be a district-wide decision?
It wasn't a district-wide decision to begin with. I think it was from the bus company, but I'll look back into it and we'll put it on our next leadership team agenda.
'Cause I know one of the coaches had said that they were asked not to bus by another school because they couldn't get a bus. So I don't know. The other pieces was they didn't know where to go, and I directed them to Morgan to know where that money would be going, that increase of that, like where it was, because all they could see was, what was in their own school. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think any budget questions either point to the principal or to me.
Okay.
That's definitely not the level that you.
Well, that's what I said, so I have no idea.
I also know historically, at least in Sheldon, many moons ago, we would bus kids, and a lot of the problem is kids will ride to the game, parents bring them home, but the bus driver, because of the agreement, what have you, they end up sitting there, and then no one rides the bus home.
Yeah, and I
So
know
that was
in my last years at Bakersfield, bus to the games but did not bus home. So I don't know, yeah.
Sure, I'm gonna look into it.
Yep.
All right, so it sounds like that's something that principals and Lynn are gonna pick up as they kind of map out the fall sporting season. Right, okay. So for board business, we have an open board seat. Erin has stepped down and is now our assistant principal at Berkshire. And we have had, Zachary Dorman, who's a Bakersfield resident, express interest in being on the board. He is a local, has 2 young children in the school. He's the only person that's reached out to us since the spring, since we announced the opening of that seat, and seems like he would be a great fit on our board. So I'm gonna make a motion to accept his placement on the board.
And that was Zach, who was here. His wife is due, could be any time, so she did call him out.
Yes,
So-
yes, so
Yes.
he had to tend to some things. So I'll do that by roll. Kat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Arlene,
Aye.
Emily, and Mary is an aye. So welcome, Zachary, to the board.
I will reach out to him and we'll get the paperwork.
Perfect.
And try to get him deputized.
That would be
by the
great.
next meeting.
And maybe if you're able to email him all the stuff from the VSBA about some of those videos to get him up to speed on the workings of the board, that would be great.
I can send that out to him, Mary.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Lynn.
And I'll bring this up a lot in budget season as well, but in terms of town meeting day 2025, Erin's former seat was up anyway, so Zach will have to run in March, and your seat is up in March.
Yeah.
So it's only those 2 that
Yeah.
will run.
Great. Okay. Any future agenda items that folks want to mention tonight, plenty of time to,
Under that same board business, we also need to elect a clerk
yes,
for this board, as well as a representative to the negotiations.
Right.
subcommittee.
so, when Erin was asked at her departing meeting what the clerk does, she said pretty much nothing. So it's not a heavy lift. If someone would like to volunteer for that clerk position, you'll likely not have to do too much.
If the chair and the vice chair were both out, that you have to run the meeting.
That's basically it?
Yeah.
Well,
Because you don't have to do notes anymore.
Good, I was gonna say, as long as we don't have no time.
No, I've got the notes taken
Good.
care of.
Would you?
Yeah, I'll pick it up.
Okay, perfect. Do we need to make a motion for that or no? Okay, I'll make a motion for Arlene to assume the position of clerk for the board. By roll, Kat,
I,
John,
Aye.
Emily, Mary is an aye, Arlene?
I abstained.
All right, perfect. And then for negotiations, Erin and I are on the support staff negotiations team, and John and I are on the teacher negotiation. So we need someone willing to do that support staff. And it is a little more work than the clerk job. When we're in the thick of negotiations, it can be 3 somewhat lengthy meetings. Morgan, remind me timeline again, when we're doing those.
So normally we would start having some internal board meetings, December timeframe.
Right,
And then we usually have 3 meetings with the union, January, February, March.
yeah,
That's always subject to change depending on how negotiations are going.
right,
And are they up for negotiations this year?
Yes.
yes. Both teachers and support staff this year.
we've actually not yet settled your support staff for this coming year either.
Mary, I could do the support.
Support staff?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So I'll make that motion for Arlene to be on our support staff negotiation committee. Do that by roll. Kat,
I,
John,
Aye.
Emily, and Mary is an aye. Okay, great. So our next meeting is going to be September 4th at Berkshire. Anything else? I think we covered everything, eh? All right, so I'll make a motion to adjourn by roll. Kat,
I.
John,
Aye.
Arlene,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Mary is an aye. Enjoy the last couple weeks of summer and see you all in September. Thanks.